Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Alex Schultz, and I'm the Content Marketing Manager at Centuro Global. If you've not heard of us before, I'll just give you a very brief introduction. Our AI-enabled legal and professional services help enterprises and startups enter global markets at a fraction of the speed and cost of traditional providers. And we're thrilled to have you all with us today as we are joined by Ezequiel Canestrari, ClearBank Europe's COO. When they were founded in 2015, ClearBank became the UK's first new clearing bank to open in over 250 years, offering cloud and API-based banking infrastructure to financial institutions. They've swiftly become one of the fastest growing and most recognizable names in the UK's booming fintech scene. And today, we're going to be checking in on the progress of their European expansion journey so far. Earlier this year, ClearBank obtained a license to offer banking services in the Netherlands and therefore the wider EU. Long a mainstay of London's fintech sector, ClearBank's expansion onto the continent shows that even after Brexit, high-growth British tech companies still see a huge amount of opportunity in the European market. And the feeling is clearly mutual. ClearBank were granted one of the fastest credit institution licenses in Europe's history. Today, we're going to explore the strategic thinking behind the company's decision and why Europe still holds its powers of attraction for UK tech companies. We'll also dive into the regulatory and technical challenges they faced along the way, in particular, the task of scaling a technical infrastructure and a service offering from one regulatory environment to another. We'll get a sense of the adaptations they've had to make to suit the different norms of the European market, not least a new set of compliance obligations, and how they've successfully de-risked their expansion trajectory. I also hope that Ezequiel will give us just a little glimpse of what might be next in ClearBank's global story. But before we dive into the content, I just have to go over a few quick housekeeping items to ensure that the session runs smoothly. We are recording this webinar, so if you miss any part of it or want to revisit something later, don't worry. You'll receive a link to the recording after the session. We love engagement, so if you have any questions during the presentation, please use the comments section. We'll be answering questions during the dedicated Q&A time at the end, so drop them in there if you have any to ask. If we can't get to all of your questions, don't worry, we'll follow up after the webinar. If you run into any technical issues like audio or video problems, try refreshing your page first. If that doesn't help, feel free to reach out in the chat and our support team will assist you. Lastly, if you'd like to share your thoughts or key takeaways on social media, please tag us at Centuro Global so we can see and engage with your posts. But anyway, let's get started. Hello, Ezequiel. It's great to have you here.
Hi, Alex. Thank you for having me here. It's great to spend the time with you on talking about ClearBank's expansion into Europe.
And you've been at ClearBank for quite some time now, haven't you? From quite an early stage of the company's development. How many years has it been?
Been now about 6.5 years. I joined back in July 2018. So quite a journey, being able to see the company grow in the UK, being a force to be reckoned with, and now being part of the European expansion.
So with that kind of experience of building it, if not quite from the ground up, then from a pretty early stage in its evolution, hopefully you can tell me, was an eventual international expansion always the ambition at ClearBank from the get-go?
Yes, I still remember the conversation with Charles McManus, the group CEO, back in 2018, and we always talked about the golden triangle, right? It was the UK, Europe, and the US, and being able to offer to our customers those services. So we always planned it as a global brand that provides services internationally. But we needed to get the UK right, do it properly at home. And I think we've done that in the last few years. And now that we've done so, we're able to expand into Europe. And obviously, we are starting to put our focus into the US as we speak.
Yeah, it's interesting the choice of going to Europe first. I think just in the context of, a few months ago, everyone was talking about the big Mario Draghi report into EU competitiveness, which prompted a lot of largely negative and in my view, exaggerated discussion about Europe losing its edge in the global tech race. With that backdrop in mind, why was Europe, other than the US or even Asia, your first port of call? And specifically, why did ClearBank choose the Netherlands as the launch pad into the EU market?
Um, Europe was always logically our first step into our expansion. I think um, having the proximity to the UK helps a lot. Going through this sort of expansion is never easy. You need to adapt your resources, your tech, and everything. And we wanted to go to a place where the culture was similar, the language was similar, but also the regulatory framework was relatively similar. So there obviously, and we will touch upon these later in the conversation, but there are differences in the UK and European regulations, but overall, there are a lot of similarities. And we wanted our first step to be as easy as possible. And opening a bank in Asia with the time differences, cultural differences, language barriers would have been too much of a risk for us. So we wanted to be mindful of that.
Of course.
Um, Similarly, the European market is huge. I think people tend to forget uh, how big it is and the opportunities it brings for us. We are conscious that there are many more banks that do payments than what is in the UK, but we also know that we have an edge on our technology and the way we operate. But to answer your question about the Netherlands, I think the Netherlands has a very robust economy. It's a AAA rating. Has been well known for famous large organizations, is particularly in banking, but most recently on really big fintechs too, from EMIs and PIs to other banks that provide services. So we've always seen the Netherlands as a very innovative country. We knew that the regulator was a good one that provides encourages innovation, but also has the robustness behind it to make sure that we can go and settle in a good regulatory environment too.
Yeah.
Um,
So the regulatory environment is a big part of your strategic thinking. And so, what does success in this expansion look like for you? How are you measuring your progress and along what metrics?
I think we already had some measures of success in the first few months. I think the reaction that we got from the market and our customers and prospect customers once we announced the license has been fantastic. And that shows us that the customers were really interested in a product like ClearBanks in Europe that can really make a difference and change how payments are done in Europe. We're also looking into, I think, in the first year, our priorities being able to be scalable, resilient, and manage risk in an appropriate way. So we are trying to take the time to grow and at pace, but being safe and secure for our customers. And we have some ambitious targets. We want to be able to do replicate what the UK has done in the UK entity has done in the UK in Europe, but even faster.
Great. So I guess I'd like to know a bit about the state of play so far. What steps did you have to go through in order to get your European banking license?
So we started our engagement with the first meeting with the DNB was June 2022, and it was a very early conversation to tell them that we were planning to apply for the license. And then from there, we took the time to prepare what it's called a pre-application, telling with a full set of documents. And I think what was critical for us was the preparation ahead of that. In order to be able to be successful in that journey, we needed to have really good documents, really good processes, have the tech ready, the controls ready. So once we were able to apply, the process was smooth. So we submitted our pre-application on the 28th of November, 2022, and we received the feedback February 23, and by end of April of 23, we submitted the formal application that contained more than 140 documents. And from there, we had regular engagement with the DMB. I think that was also a key to our success. We were providing detailed reports to them on the progress we were making on the various topics, and having regular meetings with them to discuss elements of our application. And there was a lot of the education on our products and services, because we are not a standard bank, right? We focus on payments. We are more technology driven than many of other banks that they would have seen. So explaining that to them was critical to move jointly. So it was a parallel work by ourselves and the regulator, and that worked really, really well.
Mm. So the trick is to take a proactive approach to documentation and explanation, and making sure that regulators are always looped in and informed.
Absolutely, those were the key items, and I think meeting deadlines and being clear with the regulator, that always helps. We never miss a deadline in this process, and it's something that we're very, very proud of. We were able to turn around things in a timely manner and being transparent. If there was any issues, we wanted to be honest with the regulator and tell them what the issues were.
Hmm. Well, that sounds like a recipe for success. And now that ClearBank Europe is up and running, what are the key practical priorities at this moment for expanding your market share across the continent? And how do they differ from what you've previously done in the UK?
So from a tech point of view, we have a single code base that's been deployed globally, which allowed us to really have a head start in this process. But we needed to build from scratch all our payment schemes. So we have built the infrastructure for Target 2, SEPA Instant, and SEPA CT. And the priorities now are really testing these. So we have, over the past few months, we have done end-to-end testing of all our processes, and successfully without any problems. And we are now aligning ourselves to the scheme windows. So the first scheme that we were able to join because of their availability was Target 2, and we've done that in September. And we do family, friends and family, and after that, we do live proving for 2 months. We call it flashing the pipes, but that's exactly what it is. We want to make sure everything is really clean and working as expected in production before we really scale up. We are in the process with SEPA Instant and progressing without any hiccups at all. And we're planning on replicating the same with SEPA credit transfer in December, which is the scheme window. So we are expecting to be fully able to scale up in very early 2025.
Wow,
From a
so
Yeah, from a customer point of view, we have a really big pipeline. We have a lot of interest from a number of customers across. I see a question there if it's Western Europe or Eastern Europe. We're planning really of servicing all of Europe. The way we see ourselves, we're not really just a Dutch bank. We are really a pan-European provider of payment services and safeguarding. And we have already passported our license into 7 countries, and there's 5 more that we are working with the DNB to do so. We have 3 pilot customers that have been working with us for the past few months, but we have a very strong pipeline for the next few months. So as soon as we are able to start scaling and we complete our testing, we'll open the gates for more and more customers.
So 2024 has been kind of a testing ground in a way, and 2025 is going to be the big bang for ClearBank Europe.
That's our expectation. Yes, we expect a very busy Q1 in 2025.
And have you encountered any challenges in transitioning and ensuring scalability between the different digital infrastructures of the UK and then the EU market, and then the various kind of national sub-infrastructures that make up the EU market?
So luckily, having a single code base help us from a transitioning point, and having flags to being able not to have, let's say, faster payment, which is a UK scheme in Europe, and those kind of things. But regulations, as I said, are quite similar, but there's difference in regulations. We know that DORA is coming up in Europe. There's a lot of requirements for SEPA, for changes in SEPA Instant, for example, expected in January. So those kind of changes drive us to be very on top of it, and we need to do some tweaks to be able to accommodate to those changes. And as things get more clear, because for example for SEPA Instant there's been some clarifications a couple of months ago, so we're tweaking things, and we've even had some concerns as to we being with a platform that is more advanced than what the current regulation is. So that's always been a challenge.
Yeah, and so for those who might not be familiar with DORA or SEPA Instant, DORA is regulation designed to strengthen the digital operational resilience of the financial institutions, so that the European financial sector can keep operating effectively during the case of disruptions. And SEPA Instant is a pan-European instant payment system that will enable transfers within seconds. So these are obviously huge phenomena for the European fintech industry. And so that brings me on quite nicely to the question of compliance, which is, of course, Centuro Global, kind of our stock in trade. Apart from DORA and SEPA Instant, in the 8 years since the UK voted to leave the EU, we've seen some divergence in both financial regulation and technology regulation. And what are the kind of major regulatory challenges you've encountered in bringing a financial services offering that was originally shaped in London into the EU?
I think the biggest challenge really has been staying on top of all the regulatory change. And it's very easy to follow and understand changes like SEPA Instant or DORA or PSD3, because those are the big regulations coming out. But the challenge is the smaller regulations, and also some of the common practice in local markets. So I think one of the mistakes many people do is think that Europe is a single country, but the reality is the sum of 27 countries, and as a result, each one have a different way of doing things, and we need to tweak and adapt. And even though certain things are not necessarily regulatory requirements, there are some nuances on the way of operating and what the regulators expect in those countries. And for us, identifying that has been a bit of a challenge that we probably took it a bit more relaxed, thinking everything would be more consistent. But as we started engaging with more customers, we are finding new expectations from regulators in different countries.
Yeah, compliance never ends, really. It can be a mammoth, daunting task. And what kind of protocols or processes has ClearBank put in place for running its compliance operation? And have you ever felt that that's a missing piece of the puzzle and that you need a better system for handling it all?
Yes, absolutely. Compliance is, it's to your point, is a daunting mammoth. It's a big thing. We have the way we do it is we we have something what we call horizon scanning. We try to get ahead of all regulations, and that's a mixture of self research, uh, but also we use a third party to try to collate some of the news that come out. The challenge here is the risk of missing something, particularly on those smaller regulations, laws and regulations that come out. And I think that's where AI, I think, will play a massive role in the future, and companies like Centuro can really help. I think we've tried, especially in the UK, finding what the right balance is, and I think we got to a good point. But with the ever evolving compliance landscape, with the AI, we hope to be able to help out and get more into the confidence and ahead of time.
Yeah, AI is a godsend in that respect because there's just, as you say, the sheer volume of regulatory events going on, even within the 27 markets of the EU, can be just deafening. It can be there's just so many new laws being drafted that it's very hard to keep up with them all unless you have a technical solution to do that and to collate and aggregate them all for you. Um,
I
and
think
sorry,
part
go
of the
on.
benefit we have is, thankfully, our platform is very flexible. But I can imagine for other organizations that have more old school technology, adapting and making the necessary tweaks for each one of these regulations take a long time. So the earlier you can identify the requirements and start working on them, the better.
Absolutely. I mean, we come across a lot of clients who are still kind of limited by analog or legacy technology, and that can be a major hindrance in having the agility to quickly turn your compliance operation on a dime in response to a new piece of legislation, whether large or small and slightly insidious. And I guess there's for a company like ClearBank, there's also the ever-present specter of cybersecurity risk. I was reading a few months ago about the results of the ECB's cyber stress test of Eurozone banks, which unearthed a lot of systemic security risks and potential points of failure in the case of a cyber attack. Given that you provide digital services to financial institutions, from a technical perspective, have you had to account for risk factors on the client side when branching into this market?
Yeah, absolutely. When we look into expanding into the various markets, we really do a risk assessment, and that was part of the preparation for the license, right? Before we started building anything, we needed to know what risk we were facing, and cyber it's always top of mind for us. We want to be safe not only for ourselves but for customers. So we take cyber very seriously, and we have an excellent team on our side, not only looking into phishing attempts, but also making sure our platform is robust and resilient, and that we have the right controls in place with the standard BCP and crisis management testing regularly to make sure that in the case of something going wrong, we are ready to react.
And I guess is it a more precarious situation from a risk perspective in Europe, from a cybersecurity risk perspective specifically, than it has been in the UK, or is it kind of level pegging?
I think it's been quite similar. I think, to be honest, cyber is like it's evolving every day, and with the political situation around the globe, that makes it more complex. With ClearBank's name also being out there and being a recognized brand, we need to be extremely careful and making sure that we are doing the best we can. But we we don't really make a difference from our side into EC2 UK or Europe. We don't lower our standards. We think it's more, if anything, we keep the maximum standard in every location we are.
Of course. And aside from the regulatory and technical considerations, have you found that you've had to tweak your commercial strategy much in order to fit the preferences of European institutions?
We have indeed, actually. We were having a few conversations the last couple of weeks. I think in Europe is the role of system integrators and how funds are safeguarded is very different to what we have in or what we see in the UK. And as a result, we're having to make some tweaks in our product offering to be able to facilitate that to our customers. We want to be able to give them what they need, and in some cases we are talking to them because our solution is actually more modern and has a lot of benefits to them. So we give them the option of the more old school solution, or looking into what ClearBank can bring in terms of innovation and safeguarding of funds in a brand new way, and obviously compliant with local laws and regulations.
Of course. So there's a sense of kind of giving people the time to adapt to change.
Yes, that's exactly it.
And are there kind of differences in sensibility or etiquette when it comes to onboarding, interacting with new clients in the EU that you have that either that you knew about before and had to steer through, or that have surprised you?
Um, I think in many cases we're expecting a bit more of a colder relationship with our customers, and it's probably been completely the opposite. The engagement with customers of across the whole of Europe has been fantastic. There's been a really buzzing energy from our customers, and they've all been very open to discuss their issues and the challenges, and keen to look for solutions. We were expecting a bit more reservation on, you know, being initially a UK firm and setting up in the Netherlands. But so far, the welcoming and the engagement with customers has been fantastic.
So would you say that, and this is slightly harking back to my comments earlier about the discourse around EU competitiveness, that there is a difference between perceptions of the EU market at the moment and what you actually see on the ground from an actual business perspective?
Yes, I think um, sometimes we have that situation where we get questioned, oh, how do you see this political situation? And we're in the ground, and the customers that we are seeing, it's fantastic. It's really, we see the appetite might not be as public and loud as maybe some fintechs in the US, but there's definitely new potential customers for us that have really creative solutions and really creative ideas. So I think we can see some interesting propositions in the next few years, and hopefully uh, supported by ClearBank.
Fantastic. So, what's next in 2025, or is there a lot that you probably can't tell me?
Well, I think you've seen probably all the posts on social media, particularly LinkedIn, about not only the UK but Europe. We've been going from strength to strength. I think without going into too much detail, I think ClearBank has a fantastic future ahead. 2025 will be extremely busy. It's going to be the moment to scale the bank and start putting volume through. And we're very confident that we can do it. I think, if anything, the challenge will be coping with all the demand we have and trying to grow safely rather than the opening the floor to everyone. But yeah, it's going to be extremely busy, and obviously we're going to start looking into the US now too. So and one of the things I'm particularly excited about is we're building the functionality for European customers to be able to make real-time payments in UK payment schemes and vice versa. So that will allow instant settlement across the region between UK and Europe. So that's going to be functionality that our customers will definitely love, plus the standard multi-currency and FX, which is another of our big products scheduled for later this year. So we will finish with a lovely suite of products that I'm sure our customers will love.
Well, really exciting times ahead then. I think we're going to move on to the Q&A session now. We've had a few questions in the chat and also leading up to the webinar. So I think we can kick things off by addressing those. And I can see one that's just come in from Ben Sukia saying, Ezequiel, can you tell us about the hiring and recruitment side of your expansion? Have you hired locally from the Dutch and the EU market, or mainly moved people over from London?
That's a really good question. So we haven't really moved that many people over from London. When we started, we had a number of resources that were um, temporarily providing support to the European business. Now we are hiring locally. We are not hiring just Dutch people. We are hiring European, but based in Europe. So we have a very diverse team sitting in the Netherlands in our headquarters that we just opened of European talent. And we love that diversity. I think that will help us grow and be better.
And what's your favorite thing about working in the Netherlands so far?
I actually love the city. It's the green areas with the water beside it. It just I our offices are just by the canal,
Yeah.
and the view from our boardroom, it's great. We all every now and then we see a party boat passing by, but other than that, it's really good. It's the colors and everything are like, I have the best time every time I'm in Amsterdam, which is quite frequent.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a beautiful city, especially at this time of year, I suppose, with the colors changing. And we've got another question from Prarthana. Is your expansion primarily focused on Western Europe? And are you seeing potential in fast-growing Eastern European markets too?
So we are focused we don't have a particular area of focus. We have customers inbound from all over the continent. Most of where we're seeing the biggest activity at the moment is France and Ireland, but Malta, Denmark, there's quite a few countries more in Northern Europe and Eastern Europe that are picking up. Lithuania has some really interesting companies that are approaching us. So, yeah, it's as I said earlier, our plan is to provide pan-European services as soon as we possibly can. So there's no priorities at the moment.
And we had a question before the session shared with us. Do you anticipate any future changes to your strategy as a result of any potential moves towards greater UK-EU alignment that we might see over the next few years?
I think overall the strategy will remain the same. We're not really changing the strategy. There will be tweaks as to how we do things based on regulation and what we can do. But it's not going to be game changer into our strategy. The core of what we do will remain the same.
And we had a question from Adolfo Ranero asking, as you are operating with EU companies, do you have to be EU DORA Act compliant?
Well, not only because we operate with EU companies, we are a EU company, so we need to be compliant with DORA, and we are progressing extremely well. We're almost done with everything DORA related, so we're well prepared ahead of the enforcement of the regulation in January.
Great. Well, thank you for answering all those questions so thoroughly. I think we're running out of time, but if we didn't get around to answering any of your questions to those watching, we will reach out to you personally after the webinar with a response. Thank you, Ezequiel, for a really insightful, useful, illuminating conversation that I'm sure will have been inspiring to any of our audience watching and thinking about where they might take the next step in their own growth stories. And thank you to everyone for taking the time out of your day to join us. I just wanted to know if you have any potential closing remarks, Ezequiel.
No, thank you for your time. And I think, as we said a few times in the past, ClearBank is open for business in Europe, and we hope to see many of the people attending here knocking out the door soon.
Thank you. And to those watching, we will shortly be sending around a link to watch the whole session back in case you missed anything. And we will see you all soon at the next Centauro Global webinar. Thank you very much.